Hey, if you're scrolling through endless gaming laptop options and wondering whether any of them actually live up to the hype, I get it. You don't want to drop a few $100 on a machine that looks great on paper but ends up being a disappointment when you actually sit down to game or stream. I've been digging through specs, user forums, and a handful of reviews to see if this MSI 15.6-inch thin A15 is the sweet spot for someone who wants solid performance without stepping into the ultra-premium price bracket. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about who this laptop might really be for. If you're a college student who needs a portable rig that can handle a few AAA titles between classes, or a part-time streamer who wants to edit video on the fly while still getting decent frame rates in games, this model lands squarely in that middle ground. The AMD Ryzen 5 7535HS combined with an RTX 4050 gives you a cogpu pair that, in real-world tests, comfortably pushes titles like Elden Ring or Valorant into the 60 frames per second zone at 1080p with medium to high settings. That's a step up from the bare-bones integrated graphics you'd find in a typical Ultrabook, but you're not paying the premium you'd see on an RTX 4080 powered laptop. On the flip side, if you're a competitive esports player who lives and breathes 144Hz or higher at max settings, or you're looking to do serious 3D rendering for professional work, you'll probably feel the limits sooner rather than later. The RTX 4050, while a solid newcomer to the mid-range segment, still trails the high-end cards when you crank up the texture details or try to run ray tracing at full fidelity. In those scenarios you'll end up dialing settings back to keep the frame rate stable, which can be a letdown if you were hoping for a set-and-forget experience. Now, about the storage and memory layout. MSI lists 8GB of DDR5 RAM and a 512GB SSD. In practice, 8GB feels just enough for most modern games if you close background apps, but you'll notice performance dips when you try to keep a bunch of browser tabs, Discord, and a streaming overlay open simultaneously. Upgrading to 16GB isn't a nightmare. The two SODIMM slots are accessible and the laptop's slim chassis makes a two-stick upgrade viable without needing to replace the whole board. The 512GB SSD is fast enough to boot Windows 11 in under 10 seconds and load game worlds quickly, but it fills up fast if you keep a sizable library of titles. I'd recommend pairing it with an external NVMe enclosure or a cheap secondary drive if you anticipate needing more space. That extra cost isn't reflected in the base price, so it's a hidden trade-off that buyers should anticipate. One of the practical strengths that often gets overlooked is the Wi-Fi 6E module. In my apartment, which shares a congested 2.4 GHz band with several neighbors, I saw a noticeable dip in latency when gaming online compared to an older Wi-Fi 5 laptop. The newer protocol gives you a cleaner channel and less jitter, which matters when you're trying to land that perfect headshot. If you're planning to game in a dorm or a coffee shop with spotty Wi-Fi, this feature can be a quiet game changer. The display is another area where the A15 balances price and performance. It's a 15.6-inch Full HD panel with a 144Hz refresh rate, which makes motion feel smooth in fast-paced shooters. The colors are decent out of the box, nothing like a calibrated IPS panel you'd find on a flagship Ultrabook, but still vibrant enough for casual photo or video editing. The downside is the lack of an HDR certification. Bright highlights can look clipped in games that push HDR content. If you're a content creator who relies on color accuracy, you'll likely need an external monitor for critical work. Keyboard feel is a practical consideration that's often neglected in spec sheets. MSI equipped this model with a perky RGB backlight, which is nice for aesthetics, but more importantly the key travel is around 1.4 mm. It's not the deep, tactile experience of a mechanical board, but it's comfortable for long gaming sessions without causing finger fatigue. The keyboard also offers a dedicated macro key, which can be programmed for quick shortcuts, handy if you're into MMO key bindings or want to start recording with a single tap. Battery life deserves a reality check. Gaming laptops are notorious for draining fast, and the A15 is no exception. With the RTX 4050 running at full load, you'll probably get around 2 to 3 hours of actual gameplay before you need to plug in. That's fine if you're near a power source, but if you plan to game on a train or in a coffee shop for extended stretches, the battery will be a limiting factor. The charger is a fairly bulky 180W brick, which adds to the portability concerns. Carrying both the laptop and the charger can feel a bit like lugging around a small suitcase. Another subtle drawback is the webcam. It's a